My name is Pooja. Welcome to the week's Sunday special episode of Around the World in 7 Days. Sometimes, the decisions taken in global politics have a profound impact on all our lives. We will discuss one such story in today's episode. You must be familiar with NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO came into existence in 1949 after the Second World War. It was formed by the United States of America, Canada and some other Western countries in response to the threat of the Soviet Union's expansion in Europe. However, the Soviet Union disintegrated in 1991 and various new countries were formed out of it. Not only has the Soviet Union disintegrated, but its arrangement has also transformed and has taken different forms. However, Russia is carrying the Soviet Union's legacy forward. Consequently, the enemies of the Soviet Union have now started considering Russia as their adversary. Russia alone has posed a great challenge to the opponents of the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Russia's invasion of Ukraine added fuel to the fire in determining Russia's relations with its adversaries. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has not only threatened European peace and security, but also has raised questions about NATO's position. After this incident, NATO is facing the challenge of saving its credibility. Amid these challenges, NATO summit was held in Madrid, the capital of Spain, recently. The heads of states of the Indo-Pacific countries like Japan, Australia, New Zealand and South Korea, as well as Sweden and Finland countries sharing land and sea borders with Russia also participated for the first time in the summit. At this summit, the member states also agreed to create a comprehensive strategic framework for the next decade. This strategic framework not only considered Russia as a direct threat, but also China as a security threat for the first time. NATO considers China as a threat due to Chinese policies which pose a great threat to the interests, security and values of NATO. Against this backdrop, the first question arises that whether NATO is expanding itself from the Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific by inviting the countries of the Indo-Pacific to the summit and declaring China a new threat. Whereas, the second pertinent question arises that whether NATO will be able to deal with the Chinese security challenges in the Indo-Pacific. The third significant question is that whether NATO will be able to protect European peace and security from a direct Russian threat. We will try to find answers to all these questions in today's story. But first of all, let us know about NATO. NATO is a collective security alliance consisting of 30 Western countries led by the US, including 28 European countries and 2 North American countries. However, only 12 countries were part of NATO at the time of the establishment. It was established in 1949 through the Washington Treaty. According to Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, an attack on any member of NATO shall be considered an attack on the whole of NATO. Hence, Article 5 is called the backbone of the NATO alliance as this article guarantees the sovereignty and security of the member states. As of June 2022, 5 countries, namely Finland, Sweden, Ukraine, Georgia and Bosnia and Herzegovina have filed applications for NATO membership. If their application gets accepted by NATO, then the number of NATO members will increase to 35. Now the question arises that whether NATO is expanding itself from the Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific. In fact, for years, China has been making a ruckus about Asian NATO. When India held a joint naval exercise with the US, Japan, Australia and Singapore in 2007, then China considered it as the beginning of Asian NATO. Since then, the issue of Asian NATO has remained at the center of Chinese propaganda. However, the Chinese propaganda cannot suppress the fact that the neighbors of China are turning to NATO due to Chinese expansionism. The Asian countries have started to restore their relations with the US. On the other hand, the US also wanted to build stronger ties with Asian countries. Now, the US has again found a means to infiltrate the Indo-Pacific region. Asian countries are also trying to diversify their security partnerships. This led to the engagement of the Asian countries with Europe as well as the emergence of new Indo-Pacific regional alliances. Quad and AUKUS are prime examples of these newly formed alliances. As far as the expansion of NATO to the Indo-Pacific is concerned, some experts believe that Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand will not become formal members of the European NATO military alliance. They will develop only limited military ties with NATO which can aid them in countering the Chinese aggression. Hence, it can be inferred that although NATO may not formally expand to the Indo-Pacific, but its informal expansion is taking place in the Indo-Pacific. China is not only emerging as a regional power in the Indo-Pacific, but its relations with other Indo-Pacific countries are mired with controversies, mainly due to its expansionist and imperialist policies. China has border disputes with almost all its neighboring countries. China often threatens small countries with military might and challenges their sovereignty and security. Since small countries are not capable of countering China on their own, they are forced to be a part of the larger alliance. They join alliances of major countries for protecting their security and sovereignty from an aggressive and powerful country. Fearing China, these small countries will become a part of the US alliance and will support NATO in countering China. It will certainly put some limit to China's aggressive attitude. The final question is that whether NATO will be able to protect European peace and security from a direct Russian threat. Europe is concerned about its security after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. NATO took prompt action and it increased the number of soldiers from 40,000 to 3 lakhs. Most of these soldiers were stationed in the eastern part of Europe, bordering Russia. Furthermore, US President Joe Biden announced that the US would increase its military presence in Europe by increasing the number of troops in Romania, building a new military base in Poland, sending 2 F-35 squadrons to the United Kingdom and deploying air defense system in Italy and Germany. Moreover, NATO countries have also insisted on increasing their military budget. All these initiatives may or may not protect the sovereignty of European countries, but their security concerns will increase as these initiatives will lead to an arms race in the world. The world may again enter the era of the Cold War. China claims that NATO is trying to start the Cold War again and is trying to expand its reach from Europe to Asia Pacific by organizing this summit. Although the Chinese claim about NATO might be true, but peace and prosperity of the last few decades have greatly increased the influence of Russia and China in Asia as well as Europe. Furthermore, the imperialist ambitions of both the countries have created massive geopolitical concerns in the world. Their actions have actually helped in strengthening old alliances rather than intensifying the conflict between the US and its regional allies. It has also given birth to new security alliances. Indeed, the West must be thanking Russia and China's expansionist policies as they have led to the strategic integration of the Asian and European geopolitical forums. No matter what, all the countries of Europe and Asia will have to deal with the consequences either willingly or unwillingly. In the next segment of this Sunday special episode, we will discuss about some other important international news. ECOWAS has now lifted the economic and financial sanctions imposed by it on the West African country of Mali. The country has been facing sanctions for a long time. These sanctions have been lifted after the military regime of Mali promised the return of democracy in the country in 24 months and the publication of new electoral laws. ECOWAS, a regional political bloc in West Africa, imposed economic and financial sanctions of Mali when Assimi Goïta overthrew the civilian government and established military rule in Mali. Jobs and industries in Mali were badly affected due to these sanctions. Trade and commercial activities in Mali had come to a standstill as Mali is landlocked. Mali is located in the western part of Africa, sharing borders with 7 countries: Niger, Algeria, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Mauritania, Guinea, and Ivory Coast. A number of civilians residing in the Kelem-Wolega area of Oromia state of Ethiopia were murdered. OLA, that is Oromo Liberation Army, is being held responsible for these attacks. Ethiopia's second largest ethnic group, Amhara, was targeted during these attacks. Ethiopia is a part of the Horn of Africa that includes Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti. Ethiopia is bordered by Kenya, Somalia, South Sudan, Djibouti, and Eritrea. Moving on to Middle East. Yair Lapid has been sworn in as the 14th Prime Minister of Israel, a Middle Eastern country. He has replaced the outgoing PM Naftali Bennett. However, Lapid has been sworn in at this post for a short term. He will act as a caretaker government till the general elections are held in Israel. The general elections are to be held from 1st November 2022. Israel is a Middle Eastern country which is located on the southeast of Mediterranean Sea and the northern coast of the Red Sea. It is bordered by Lebanon to the north, Syria in the northeast, Jordan in the east, and Egypt in the southwest. It also touches the border of Palestine with the West Bank in the east and Gaza Strip in the west. Turkey and Armenia have agreed to open their common border for nationals of their countries. Both the countries have also agreed to start direct cargo flights. Relations between both the countries have been strained for centuries. Both the countries had closed their borders since 1993. After a long time, Turkey and Armenia restored their diplomatic ties in December 2021. Thereafter, in January 2022, talks were held between the two countries to completely restore their relationship without any conditions. Both the countries are a part of Eurasia. Turkey shares its borders with 8 countries, namely Greece, Iraq, Georgia, Syria, Bulgaria, Iran, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And Armenia shares its borders with 4 countries, namely Georgia, Turkey, Iran, and Azerbaijan. The Black Sea touches the northern border of Turkey, while Armenia is a landlocked country. So, let us now look at our question. Recently held NATO summit in Spain is being construed as the beginning of Cold War. Evaluate.